So I've read 50 books this year, and in this video, I'm going to share my top 3 thrillers. I'm going to make a separate video with my top 3 overall favorite books. Not quite top 3 material, but Local Woman Missing gets an honorable mention. This is a solid thriller. Several people in a small community go missing. I would recommend to anyone looking for a page turner, a beach read, but just not super memorable. Coming in at third, I am going to put The Maid. This is more murder mystery than thriller, I would say. Rarely would I describe a murder mystery as heartwarming, but this really is a feel-good because the protagonist is just such a lovable, wonderful character. It takes place in a hotel, someone gets murdered, and then it is a whodunit. Coming in at number 2 is The Plot. Now, reviews on this one are mixed, which I don't understand. I loved this one. There's a book within a book element to this, and it's kind of a commentary on writing. Now, the plot, when it's revealed, I think you'll probably see the reveal coming. I certainly did, but it didn't take away from the fun of reading it. I thought it was smart and unique. I loved it. Coming in at number 1, honestly, this is probably among my top overall books as well, not just the thriller category. Sharp Objects. This one is very twisted. So a journalist goes back to her hometown to cover the story of 2 little girls who have gone missing, and then it spirals out from there. The ending of this one is so disturbing, so twisted. I loved it. I have read 50 books this year, and I've narrowed it down to my top 3 favorites. I have a separate video with my top 3 thrillers. This is my top 3 overall favorite books I read in 2022. Before we get to top 3, let's start with an honorable mention to A Little Life. Now, the reason this is an honorable mention and not top 3 is because towards the end, I started to get angry at the author. Like, why do you hate Jude so much? Give the guy a break. When that one big thing happens towards the end of the book, if you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. I was like, enough. It's an unforgettable book. It's great, but it was trauma porn by the end. Okay, it was really hard to pick the order of the top 3, but at number 3, I'm going to put We Begin at the End. I absolutely love this book. It broke my heart. I'm trying to figure out how to describe this book. So it's kind of about a small group of friends in this small community. Something bad happens to them, and then it picks up like 30 years later. Some of them have kids. More bad things start to happen. I don't know, just read it, okay? Trust me, this one's so good. Coming in at number 2 is The Heart's Invisible Furies. Oh my gosh, I love this book. So it is heartbreaking, but manages to also be really heartwarming at the same time. Like, very sad things happen in it, but it's told with almost humor and levity. I loved it. You will fall in love with the characters and with the relationships the characters have with each other. The dialogue is witty and wonderful, and oh, I just love it. Coming in at number 1, we're gonna take a sharp turn. Misery. I am obsessed with this book. I started to get into Stephen King a little bit in 2021, but when I read this book at the start of 2022, it sealed my deal as a Stephen King stan. I am obsessed. This book is smart. It is fucked up. It is so wonderful. You gotta read it.
I read 81 books in 2022, and these are my top 10 in no particular order. Starting strong, we have The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I have never read a book that has made me feel the way that this one made me feel. It felt so real. It was so good. Next, we have Archer's Voice. This is just a perfect small town romance. There's so much more to the story than just being a romance. It was incredible. I have bawled my eyes out to this book in the best way possible, of course. A Court of Mist and Fury. This one I think is self-explanatory. This was by far my favorite book. Malibu Rising. Again, nobody can make a book feel so real like Taylor Jenkins Reid. I felt like I was loving these characters, like I knew them personally. Ignite Me. The whole Shatter Me series was kind of the best thing to ever happen to me, but Ignite Me specifically, one of my favorite books of all time for sure. The Song of Achilles, the most heartbreakingly beautiful book I have ever read. Not a day goes by that I don't think of this book. The Shadows Between Us. This is by no means a perfect book, but for me personally, it was perfect. I have read the bad reviews, I know the criticism, and I just don't want to hear it. It's perfect in my eyes. The Cruel Prince series, which I'm counting as one book because I read them all back to back to back, and I can't tell you where one book stops and the next one starts. It's all just one big book to me. Amazing, beautiful, perfect. Vow of Thieves. I think this is an unpopular opinion to like Vow of Thieves more than Dance of Thieves. It was slightly a little bit better in my opinion, and I loved it. It's everything that a fantasy romance should be. Last book is the Mindfuck series. There's just nothing like this series. I'm also counting this as one book because the length of the books is short, so it's pretty much one book. If someone would have told me I'd be reading about a killer and rooting for her, I wouldn't have believed you. But this book does that. So those are my top 10-ish books of 2022.
I need to tell you about this book. I've never seen anyone talk about it on BookTok. It is a pretty new release, but it's the only male-written female protagonist that I've ever enjoyed. It's very intentionally pretentious, and I had to Google what words meant on almost every single page, but this author's sense of humor scratches an itch in my brain like no other. It's about a French book translator. It's called Bad Eminence. It's by James Greer. It is incredible. I would highly, highly recommend it.
The book also contains photos and these funny little fake sponsored content drink recipes.